Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Now, the Indian Supreme Court has upheld the unilateral and illegal action of the Indian government. Of course, the ruling party of which is Bharatiya Janata Party, led by its Prime Minister Narendra Modi, of abrogating the Article 370 that gave special status or the autonomy to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, it was back on 5th of August in 2019 when Indian authorities revoked this particular Article 370 and tried to forcibly annex this particular internationally recognized disputed territory and tried to make this one as one of its own. Ever since that particular day, the high-handedness of Indian authorities in this particularly internationally recognized disputed territory, as per the United Nations Security Council resolutions, these brutalities have been increasing manifold. Also, Indian authorities bringing in the demographic changes over there. Now, regarding this particular verdict, a 5-member bench of India's apex court gave a unanimous decision of upholding Indian authorities' illegal and unilateral move. Now, Chief Justice of India has been quoted as saying, let me quote him, that Article 370 of the Constitution was an interim arrangement due to war conditions in the state. Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir was never intended to be a permanent body, unquote. Will definitely bring up this particular statement by the Indian Supreme Court's Chief Justice as to what kind of truth and legitimacy this particular statement carries with it itself. Also, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has termed the verdict as a beacon of hope and says it constitutionally upholds the decision taken by the Parliament of India on August the 5th, 2019. On the other hand, there has been altogether a different reaction and response by Pakistan. Pakistan's Foreign Office has categorically rejected this verdict, saying the judicial endorsement of India's unilateral and illegal actions of 5th of August 2019 is a travesty of justice based on distorted historical and legal arguments. Likewise, Pakistan's caretaker Foreign Minister, Mr. Jalil Abbas Jilani, has said that the final disposition of Jammu and Kashmir is to be made in accordance with the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, and it is to be made in accordance with the aspiration of the Kashmiri people. Likewise, Kashmiris from across the political spectrum have rejected this verdict by Indian Supreme Court. Now, all parties Hurriyat Conference in a statement has said Indian government or its judiciary has no right to decide the legal status of internationally recognized disputed territory. Also, People's Democratic Party President Mehbooba Mufti says that people of Jammu and Kashmir will not lose hope or surrender their rights after the verdict. Likewise, National Conference Vice President Umar Abdullah says he is disappointed but not disheartened. The struggle will continue. Before heading or jumping into the discussion with an esteemed panel of guests today for Views on News, we have got a package or a news report. Let's watch that first, and then we'll definitely introduce our guests with you.
In his biased judgment, Chief Justice of Indian Supreme Court says President's order to scrap Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir special status is constitutionally valid. Chief Justice of Indian Supreme Court further ruled that Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir does not have internal sovereignty and Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir was temporary provision. He said every decision of centre cannot be challenged as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir did not retain sovereignty when it joined Union of India. A 5-member bench headed by the Chief Justice reserved its verdict on September 5th after hearing more than 20 petitions challenging the central government's decisions. Srinagar University lecturer Zahoor Ahmed was suspended for arguing in the Supreme Court in the Article 370 case. The petition declaring the abrogation of Article 370 unconstitutional was filed by Shah Faisal, a serving officer of the Indian bureaucracy. For 4 years, the Indian government deliberately kept this issue hanging. The Indian government falsely claimed to the court that it was ready to hold elections in Jammu and Kashmir, but could not give a timeline for the restoration of the state. The petitioners also challenged the bifurcation of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir into the two union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh under the Repeal of Special Status of Jammu and Kashmir Act. Meanwhile, India created new stories of persecution in Kashmir. Kashmiri people strongly protested against this cruel decision of India. In the context of Indian extremism and Modi government fascist policies, Kashmiris cannot expect justice from Indian courts, says the experts. Modi has completely controlled all the institutions of India, including judiciary, army, governance, media, and the parliament, so no unexpected decision can be expected, says the experts. This decision will clearly show whether Indian judiciary is independent or Modi's rule has been fully established on it.
We just watched that detailed report. Let me straight away jump into the discussion, bring in our panelists on this particular very important pressing issue. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Qamar Cheema, he's foreign affairs expert. Mr. Cheema, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. At the same time on Skype, we are being joined by Brigadier retired Rashid Wali Janjua, senior analyst. Brigadier Janjua, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Cheema. Now, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir happens to be an internationally recognized disputed territory, illegally occupied by India. Now, after 5th of August, unilaterally and illegally annexed by India by abrogation of Article 370. Now this Supreme Court's verdict, why do you think Indian Apex Court has ignored the internationally recognized disputed status of this territory?
Thank you very much for inviting. I think the most important thing is that before revoking Article 370, the President of India, they must have consulted the Constituent Assembly in Jammu and Kashmir. They didn't consult the Constituent Assembly, so technically, legally speaking, they couldn't revoke the Article 370. That is the basis of that. You have to ask to the Assembly before doing that. The second important thing is that, as you mentioned, that this is an internationally disputed territory, and the world recognizes that. It's not just the Supreme Court, it's not just the United Nations Security Council, it's not just the US State Department, it's not just the other countries who have been calling it continuously as a disputed territory. There are UN Security Council resolutions on it, which are there. I have heard many times the State Department saying that this is a disputed territory. I think the Prime Minister Modi just took a very bold decision back in 2019, and he believes that he wants to convert or change the shape of India. And for that matter, he has been successful. It seems that the media, the right wing of the party, they are just they are having that kind of relation where they believe that they have to move forward India from this direction, from secular identity to more of a religious or a Hindu identity. So for that matter, they are marginalizing Muslims, and they are ignoring the voices which they believe they do not matter because they are not Hindus. So I think the international community needs to pay.
I'll come to this very particular important point that you just mentioned. Now, what happens with the responsibility of international community, especially after the Apex Court of India has gone against that very spirit of upholding the United Nations Security Council resolutions? Brigadier Janjua, in your understanding, why do you think Indian Apex Court has altogether ignored the internationally recognized disputed status of this territory, upholding that illegal and unilateral move of the Indian authorities back in 2019?
I think they have not done now. They did it way back in 1949. And ever since then, there has been a continual settlers' march of folly on their part. They have cocked a snook at international law, international communities' adherence to UN resolutions. And now their present act of the Supreme Court, it stems from the same original sin. And that is, the India does not agree and does not wish to implement the UN Security Council resolutions, according to which the Kashmir issue is an international dispute, still alive on the agenda of UN Security Council. And the issue, until and unless it is decided as per the plebiscite, according to the wishes of the people of the Kashmir, there is no legality, and we do not understand, we do not accept the Indian Supreme Court's cognizance into a matter which is supra-constitution according to our understanding of international law. Now they are very cleverly, as a sop to the sensibilities of pro-India leaders like Sheikh Abdullah, they gave a limited autonomy concept, and then they cleverly inserted articles like Article 367. And as per the subclause 4 of Article 367, those laws which were applicable to Indian Union have been made applicable to Jammu and Kashmir, which according to the original 370 was not possible. So they have been cleverly tinkering with the law, and according to our understanding, this is all illegal, and there was no other outcome from this court, which is heavily tilted in favor of Hindu Rashtra establishment, because you see the constitution of this court, you see one Brahman, one affiliated with BJP, and another Chief Justice with clear leanings towards BJP. So it was more a rubber stamping of a fact, the illegal fact that they had established, which is obdurate, illegal and reprehensible to say the least, and no amount of judicial cognizance and such like decisions can undo what UN Security Council has given a very clear, in the shape of Security Council resolutions. And as we see now, it's all a part of a campaign. It was the electoral campaign promise of Modi in 2019, the revocation, and they did it through Reorg Act 2019. Right. And now there's another election, and this gift has been gifted to the right-wing rabid nationalists by the Supreme Court of India.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, you well said that it is basically that Bharatiya Janata Party, it is of course led by Narendra Modi, and now the entire world knows it's like an open truth before everybody that what kind of policy, the agenda, the kind of Hindutva ideology and the policies which are based on that, we can naturally understand to an extent that the Bharatiya Janata Party is up to that. But when it comes to the responsibility of judiciary, and especially when you talk about the top judiciary of the country which claims to be the largest democracy in the world, don't you think the responsibility of the top judiciary of such a country increases manifold? What makes them to have that very inclination towards Bharatiya Janata Party's ideology?
The judiciary has done the travesty of, this is the travesty of justice and law. What do you expect out of a judiciary that exonerates the killers and the rapists? We know Shabano case, we know other cases in which the rapists, arsonists, and the killers, they have been given a clean chit by the same Supreme Court. So we should expect the similar judgment out of this court, because this is heavily influenced by the BJP and the RSS driven agenda of the BJP. The whole judiciary was the last hope, I believe, in a constitutional sense in a country like India, which purports to be the largest democracy and shows its different face to the world. But this is the real ugly face where the last bastion of recourse to justice has also been completely subordinated by the Hindutva agenda.
Right, Mr. Cheema, the same very question, why the top judiciary of the country which claims to be the largest democracy in the world would have an inclination towards a certain specific ideology. The torchbearer of happens to be this particular ruling party that is governing India since 2014. 14?
I think there are a few points in this. The first point is that I think there is some sort of a mood in India, and that mood is that we have to change the orientation of the country. So right after 1947, they have realized that they have to be a Hindu state. So it seems that the entire spectrum of Indian state, either it is the judiciary, either it is the executive or the legislature, they are turning out to be a country which has an Hindu orientation. And for example, recently at the G20, Prime Minister Modi explained that he didn't say India, he said Bharat. So they are just trying to give a new shape, or they are trying to reinvent India, one thing. So I think the Supreme Court in that matter was responding and supporting Prime Minister Modi's this point that we need to. And secondly, I think we have seen some examples in the history where the Supreme Court has been bribed in many ways. For example, once they get retired from the Supreme Court, either they get a position at the Rajya Sabha. There have been some cases in the past where the judges have got the position in the Rajya Sabha. So I think that's also a matter, because if you remember, the Prime Minister Modi's powerful friends like Adani, they have been buying media outlets, they have been buying powerful people in India, and there is a lot of hue and cry in India that why all these projects are going to Mr. Adani or the friends of Prime Minister Modi. The Congress party is raising this question.
So when it comes to the perception about the judicial system over there and the kind of independence, whether it carries with itself or not, or it clearly goes on to have inclination towards a certain ideology within that particular country, when it comes to the international perception of the judicial system, how does it basically work within India? Don't you think the top judiciary over there should be cognizant of the fact that it might tarnish their perception internationally, and what could they do in order to restore that in the coming years if this particular party is not ruling anymore?
Well, I think the point is that the Supreme Court right now believes that, and the Indian government right now believes that we have to redraw, we have to resketch the India the way we want. So I think there is the mood in India is different. They are not going to listen to anyone. For example, you just see that how the Indian deep state has been involved in Canada, in the USA. So they are stepping up and they are trying to write things the way they believe they want. So I think, in my understanding, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, the media, they have been in the last 10 years. I think the Prime Minister Modi's footprints, political footprints, have been so much in Indian society and the different organs of the state that it seems that everybody is working for him, and everybody is just India is a strange country where the media and the government, they together lambast the opposition. Rather, the opposition and the media, they should criticize the government for whatever the performance is that. So I think India is a different country. So when it comes to the judiciary, they are also looking at how the mood is in the country, and they believe that, okay, if the Prime Minister Modi is speaking and he has he just recently won 3 elections in Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh and in other places. So they believe that this is the mood in the country, and I think the Supreme Court couldn't give any kind of an unpopular decision. Otherwise, the way Modi is popular, the judiciary in India might have been in difficult condition, and we understand that how much corruption we have seen in Indian executive and the judiciary, as I mentioned, that they get positions when they get retirement. So I think the popularity of Prime Minister Modi is still there, and by fearing that if they go for any unpopular decision, or that could lead them to the trouble. So they have come up with this, and when they say that one of the judgments says that there should be a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. What does that mean? It means the Truth and Reconciliation Commission means that they need to establish that what wrongs they have committed with the Kashmiris. So I think that is a job of the Indian government to establish that what wrongs have been committed. So if there is a report like such a report, commission report, which actually established that why Muslims are not getting a fair deal in India, why they have been marginalized because in the government positions into the jobs. So I think this is where this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which the Supreme Court is suggesting the government should do, I think that will help a lot the Kashmiris, the crimes committed by the Indian military, the crimes committed by the Indian state there, and the state-sponsored terrorism which we have seen in Indian occupied Kashmir. If honorable, respectable judges bureaucrats are appointed in that commission, there is a likely possibility the Indian government will not be in a position to publish that Truth and Reconciliation report, because by no internal standards and international standards, the way we have seen that the way people have been subjugated, the way they have been sidelined, the way they have been targeted, I think the international community has been speaking for that. And for example, for more than 5 years, the people are not being represented anywhere, and I think Supreme Court should have done it, spoken on that. Why the Supreme Court didn't say that, okay, these people are disenfranchised for more than 5 years and they are not in a position, even they don't have even the representative and the union terror, they're being, the central government is ruling them. This is a different era. This is the era where the powers are devolved. So I think the way the other states in India, where the powers have been given by center to the states, Kashmir is a different case. The power has been taken from the state and given to the center. I think if this Truth and Reconciliation Commission is properly drafted and right, and the people who are actually honest, trustworthy, and those who write the right history, I think all the successive governments of India, they will be badly exposed.
Right, Brigadier Janjua. Now, as Mr. Cheema has mentioned, when we talk about the international perception about how basically judiciary, the top judiciary in particular, operates within the judicial system of India, as Mr. Cheema has mentioned, that its verdicts are based on, specifically talking about this verdict, is based on the mood in the country now. If the top judiciary is making its verdict based on the mood in the country, rather than following the spirit of law and the Constitution, don't you think it should be cognizant of the fact it could tarnish its international perception as well? Also, it could lose confidence at home among the general masses, and would be nearly impossible for it in the coming years. If this particular ruling party is not in power, it would be impossible for it to restore that confidence and also get that international perception corrected.
You see, India doesn't care much about international opinion these days, because they have a nationalism on the steroids, and they have been recruited into contain China strategy as a regional surrogate by a global power. And that is why they are not amenable to any reason, any morality, any sense of justice. And when we talk of truth and reconciliation, I think it's a big farce. There's no point in truth and reconciliation when the fundamental original sin has not been undone, and that is that it's a dispute, and that has to be settled as per the plebiscite. And when that right is not given, and India claims that the instrument of accession that we claim to be false is true basis of establishing their union, extending the union's writ on our state, on a disputed region, I think we should concentrate on the fundamental issue. And we have a map of Kashmir with the United Nations, which clearly shows it's a disputed area. We have a UN MOGIP, Military Observers Group in Pakistan, which is a clear, tangible evidence for the whole world to see that it is a dispute. Then what kind of status within the union and the statuses like union territory and state they are talking about? And practically they have annexed, and now they are in the process of altering the demographics. And we know the electoral gerrymandering that is going on. They have added 6 seats to Jammu, which is a Hindu majority area, and only added 1 to the Wali, and which alters the whole character of the future assembly on which elections would be held. According to this Reorg Act, which was done a few days before, 3 more seats have been given for nomination to the Lieutenant Governor, and he can, those seats are 2 for the migrants and 1 from IIOJK, and that can be picked and chosen, and legislature, state legislature of their choice with the chief minister from BJP can be appointed. This is the real game, and we should be concentrating on the real game. We should be concentrating on the human rights violations that are taking place. We should be concentrating on the erasure of the Kashmiri's identity, which is the real thing. This here,
Right, Brigadier Janjua, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. Please stay with us. If you allow me, let me bring in another participant in the show, Mr. Masood Khalid, former ambassador, joining us on the phone line. Mr. Khalid, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, this Supreme Court's verdict upholding the illegal and unilateral move of Indian authorities back in 2019, how do you look at it? Doesn't it basically raise questions about the neutrality and impartiality of the top judiciary and how basically the judicial system over there in India works?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's a mockery of justice. And of course, the Supreme Court of India has endorsed what the BJP government did in 2019 in revoking the special status of the Jammu and Kashmir territory. But this does not change the legal position of the Jammu and Kashmir, which is recognized as a dispute internationally under international law, under UN Security Council resolution. So that is an established position. Although this has empowered the Indian government to continue what they are doing in terms of changing the status of the occupied territory, in terms of changing the demographics, in terms of changing, the political structure of the territory. They will bring in their own, people who would be pro-India. And basically the aim is to extinguish, that quest for freedom of the Kashmiri people. So it's a very difficult and a very challenging time for our Kashmiri brothers. But this is the game. And the human rights violations may intensify, and I think India, I'm sure, would be feeling emboldened by what is happening in Gaza. So I think what has happened today is Supreme Court, of course, has fully supported, and they have said that the territory has no locus standi as far as the sovereignty is concerned. That is a done deal, the accession and all that. So more or less now, that way the chapter is closed. And as I said before, that this will not only empower but make the Modi government bolder to take more drastic steps in the occupied territory.
When we talk specifically about the Article 370, what had been the significance of this particular article over the years, and how Pakistan has been with its position as to this particular Article 370?
Pakistan has rejected, of course, the decision of the Supreme Court of India today. And Pakistan's position does not change because this position is based on the principle of the right of self-determination, which is recognized by the United Nations, which is recognized in the UN Charter. And there are valid Security Council resolutions on the subject matter. So Pakistan's position, legal position, is sound, very much intact. And by merely saying that it's not a disputed territory, it's no longer a dispute, or it's an integral part of India, that does not change the reality of the issue. So I think it is like throwing the dust in someone's eyes. India is.
Right, Mr. Khalid. Now, when we talk about the responsibility of the United Nations Security Council resolution, relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions to resolve this particular dispute between Pakistan and India. Now, at this particular point in history, or at this particular critical juncture, when this particular verdict has come forth by the Indian Apex Court, what happens to be the responsibility of the United Nations Security Council, especially when it comes to the implementation of its relevant resolutions regarding this particular dispute? Is there any mechanism that can come into play at this particular point in time?
I don't think so, because UN Security Council has failed. Obviously, there are double standards, duality of approach, and power politics plays as far as Security Council is concerned. You have seen what is happening. Security Council has not been, it's totally disabled as far as Israeli aggression is concerned. They have not been able to even, agree to a ceasefire because of the veto-wielding authority which the permanent members have. So it is a very complicated matter as far as Security Council is concerned. India enjoys the support of the West in whatever it is doing in the context of overall global power play and in terms of competition between the United States and China. So we have to be cognizant of these, geopolitical factors and geopolitics. So I think the course left is to keep on highlighting the human rights, excesses by India in the occupied territory, and for that, Kashmiri diaspora can be organized. They can agitate. They can, knock on the doors of important world capitals, world parliaments, world media. I mean, this should be agitated by our Kashmiri brothers and sisters.
But now Pakistan's Foreign Office says that Pakistan will continue to extend its full political, diplomatic and moral support to the people of IIOJK for the realization of their inalienable right to self-determination. Now, after this particular verdict, what sort of options Pakistan does have at this point in history, both on diplomatic front as well as is there any option that could be put on the table to take this particular matter into the International Court of Justice?
International Court of Justice, is again a complicated route. What I am saying is that Pakistan has been consistent all along in supporting the Kashmiri struggle, the just cause of the Kashmiri people. Morally, diplomatically, and politically, we support the right of self-determination, and I think that position will continue. And wherever there is a possibility at international forums, we'll continue to highlight this, one-sided and unilateral nature of the Supreme Court's decision, and as well as highlight the atrocities which are being committed, on the Kashmiri people. So Pakistan has been doing this. Pakistan has all along in the Security Council also. We had 3 meetings in recent years which discussed the Kashmir dispute. So Pakistan can do as much as we are doing. So, and I am sure that Pakistan will continue to raise the issue at all relevant international forums as well as bilaterally with important world leaders. So that has been our position.
Right. So Mr. Khalid, one last question. What happens to be the option at the hands of the Kashmiris in particular at this point in time, given the fact that all the Kashmiris from across the political spectrum, including the All-Party Zuriyat Conference, People's Democratic Party and the National Conference, have in one voice rejected this particular verdict, and they say that they are disappointed but not disheartened, and the struggle is going to continue, and the Kashmiris are going to struggle for their inalienable right to self-determination. How do you think Kashmiris should take this particular matter from this point onwards?
Well, I think Kashmiris should be unified. They should be united on this, against this decision, number one. Number two, they should, knock at the doors of all relevant international forums and raise their voice. And number three, diaspora is very important in the West, Kashmiri diaspora. I think they can organize themselves and conduct the meetings, do protest if necessary, wherever it is allowed. They should protest. They should sensitize the international opinion of the injustice which is being, sort of inflicted, which is being perpetrated for the past 7 decades.
Right, Mr. Khalid, one supplementary question related to this particular mention of the diaspora, the kind of role they can play. Now, what about sensitizing the international community by holding a referendum, perhaps on the lines of the referendums we have seen in the recent past, and a separatist movement that is already going on when it comes to the Sikh community of India?
Referendum where? Sorry, I did not get the question.
When it comes to sensitizing the international community, when it comes to the responsibility or the
yes,
role
yes,
the Kashmiri...
that can be considered. Why not? Yes, that can be considered.
Mr. Masood Khalid, former ambassador, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Brigadier Janjua, now, when we talk about the United Nations Security Council resolutions, is there any sort of a mechanism that can come into play when the United Nations Security Council could try to hold India accountable for the kind of travesty of justice and the violation of its relevant resolutions on the disputed territory?
You see, it is a egregious flouting of international law. And the UN Security Council resolutions, they exist on the agenda. And since the discussion was on what needs to be done now, I think we still have the forum of UN Security Council. The issue can be agitated, provided Pakistan can muster enough support in the UN Security Council. And UN Security Council has veto-wielding powers. Some of them are very close allies of India in this new global war, global power competition. So we have to first create those conditions and then agitate the issue at UN Security Council. We can even go to UN General Assembly and muster enough support, provided we have enough support in UN General Assembly. And the UN General Assembly passes a resolution that fact-finding commission from UN should go and assess what is happening by way of violation of international law and human rights violations. And then India should be compelled to, abide by the resolutions and abide by the human rights considerations. So those are the two fora that I can think of. And then we have OIC forum, of course, where this agenda is a very important component. It is still alive on OIC's agenda, and we can agitate this issue from that platform as well. Then there is International Criminal Court. If there is a Kashmiri which is aggrieved, and inside IIOJK wants to agitate, we should provide the necessary, legal help by way of different mechanisms, so that the dossier can be presented and ICC can be agitated. Then, there's in case of Israel-Palestine case, there was a BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. So that had a very, moral angle to it. The people started boycotting those products which had the Israeli imprimatur on them. And this kind of moral suasion, I think it creates the desired impact at international level.
Point is well taken, Brigadier Janjua. I'll come back to you with a couple of more questions also. Let me bring in once again Mr. Cheema into the discussion. Mr. Cheema, now, isn't there any sort of a mechanism at the United Nations Security Council when it comes to the implementation of its resolutions regarding a certain issue, or if any sort of a violation that is happening as far as its resolutions are concerned, is there any mechanism that should automatically come into play, whether a certain party to it goes and knocks at doors or not?
Well, I think that's an important factor, but I think for that the political will of the great powers is needed. They have to show the determination, they have to show the political cards at the UN Security Council. That's the only way we can mobilize things. But I think what's happening in Gaza, if the international community really wants Kashmir to be like that, Kashmir is a nuclear flashpoint. The international community has stopped paying attention to this part of the world. They're only paying attention, okay, there is a China, we have to counter it. Okay, go counter it that in Indo-Pacific. You are helping and arming India for that matter. But the point is that, do you want to leave this region the way it is? India is a nuclear armed country. Pakistan is a nuclear armed country. And we have seen that after this 370, it's been more than 5 years. Just today, the Kashmiri leaders have been jailed in their homes. They have been, they are not allowed to go out. So for how long the Kashmiri youth and the leadership, they will not be allowed to come out. So the moment you give them freedom, they will come out and they will obviously fight for their rights. So I think the international community should not let the Kashmir to be Gaza. The international community should come forward and they should look what's going on here, and they need to ask India to play a constructive role in letting these people have the rights. If India wants to be the member of the UN Security Council, the permanent member for the UN Security Council, does it actually have that character? Does it actually have those values which the UN Charter basically says them to have those values? So I think it completely depends that on the political will of the great powers, and I believe that the people of Kashmir, they are looking towards the international community. They are looking towards those resolutions, and they are looking towards the international community that when that toothless tiger, the platform of the UN Security Council that will speak for the disenfranchised people of Kashmir. We have seen what's happening in Gaza. The international order for its usage, it needs to, the global community needs to step up. And I think for that matter, we have seen that there is a global public opinion which has developed for people of Palestine. In the same line and the same fashion, we need to raise that public opinion for the people of the Kashmir, so that we can pressurize to the Western governments. And at the same time, if international press can make up and they can write and they can write at length, so that they can target and shake up the global powers that can matter.
Right. So what about the option of taking this particular matter, especially after this particular verdict, to the International Criminal Court or International Court of Justice? We know historically it was India who actually went to the International Court of Justice for the rather than United Nations Security Council for this particular resolution of the matter. So when we talk about ICJ, could there be any sort of a mechanism that Pakistan, or when we talk about Kashmiris in particular, could take this particular matter up to the ICJ?
I think Janjua rightly mentioned on this, that if there is any aggrieved Kashmiri who wants to go there, they can move things in the right direction. I think for that matter, all those, the Kashmiri diaspora which is abroad, I think they needs to be mobilized. And for that, Pakistan needs to have a consistent approach. It should not be a patchwork that things are, if there is any kind of an activity in India or there is any kind of an activity in Kashmir, that's where Pakistan needs to come up. I think Pakistan needs to be more active in that matter. And for this, if we are able enough to further internationalize, and we need to open up those options where we can internationalize the Kashmir issue, because we have believed that the Muslim world, the way they are looking towards Palestine, the way that they are paying attention. And recently we saw the Arab foreign ministers, and they have gone, and the OIC, the foreign minister, they have gone globally to raise the issue of Palestine. In the same fashion, I think the Kashmir issue needs to be raised. Kashmir is just second in agenda in the OIC after the Palestine. So why not paying attention to the Kashmir? So I think after this, the OIC needs to come up with a strong statement about what has happened in India today. And at the same time, there should be the Pakistani authorities. They need to travel to the Arab world. They need to ask the Arab world and to the Muslim world that this is the time to speak up for the people of Kashmir. Otherwise, the developments which are going on in the Muslim world, I think they are not very helpful for the
right. Brigadier Janjua, now forming the public opinion internationally, as well as sensitizing the international community about this particular issue, especially after this verdict. Is there any possibility that the sort of referendums that we have seen in the recent past by the Sikh community worldwide, could the Kashmiri diaspora go on the same line and hold a referendum so that it could build its case internationally in front of the major Western powers in particular, and their public also?
Yeah, I'll come to that. About ICC and ICJ. You see, ICJ takes cognizance of the issues between the states, and since India will never agree to the jurisdiction of ICJ, so I think that option might not be very relevant to us. And ICC, the International Criminal Court, can take cognizance on the complaint against an individual. So any Kashmiri can take up the dossier and frame the charges. Even a country like Gambia has taken Myanmar to ICC because of Rohingya, violence against Rohingyas, human rights. So for ICC, it's a different jurisdiction, though Pakistan is not a signatory of Rome Statute, but still some Kashmiris, if they take up the case against the perpetrators of human rights violations inside, Pakistan can support tacitly or indirectly through diaspora. All the legal support can be provided. Regarding UN Security Council, I have already mentioned that's a cognizance to be taken provided we have enough support there. Now, answer to your question, referendum. You see, this referendum has emotive appeal, and I don't think so it will have any legal validation. And when our stance is rooted in a plebiscite, so we should press for that. And instead of frittering away our energies in those things will not yield any tangible results, we have a very strong stance, and we have a very strong, solid stand based upon international law, existing in the shape of human rights, UN resolutions, and we should very strongly abide by that. And we should keep showing solidarity with the people of Kashmir. We should keep agitating this issue. We should keep this issue alive in the academia, in the think tanks, and even in the international media, so that enough moral and pressure.
Brigadier Janjua, your point is well taken. Your last quick comments, Mr. Cheema, regarding the possibility of referendums on the lines of the referendums by the Sikh community in the recent past. Could those be used to sensitize the international community?
Well, I think for that there needs to be a lot of work. Massive work is needed in Pakistan and globally in the UN and particularly within the OIC as well, so that we have to re-energize and resensitize the international community on all these issues. Yes.
Mr. Qamar, Foreign Affairs expert, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype, we were joined by Brigadier Retired Rashid Wali Janjua, Senior Analyst. Brigadier Janjua, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for being with us.